The barn at midnight was a different world than the barn at noon. In the daylight, it was a place of business, of dust motes, dancing in sunbeams, of schedules and client expectations. But at night, under the amber glow of the security lights, it became a sanctuary. The air was cooler, heavy with the scent of timothy grass, molasses, and the warm, musky smell of sleeping animals. For the first time in what felt like a lifetime, the Heartland barn didn't feel hollow. It felt inhabited. Amy Fleming walked down the center aisle, her boots making a soft, scuffing sound against the concrete. She moved slowly, not out of the dragging exhaustion of grief that had plagued her for weeks, but with the pleasant, heavy fatigue of a job well done. Her muscles ached in a way that felt honest. Her hands were dry and calloused, stained with the dirt of the round pen. But they weren't shaking anymore. The tremors of panic that had defined her recent interactions with Nathan were gone, replaced by the steady hum of accomplishment. She stopped at the stall of the bay mare Hank had dropped off earlier. The horse, who had been a rearing, terrified mess just 6 hours ago, was now standing at the back of the stall, one hind leg cocked, head lowered as she nosed through her bedding. Amy reached out and rested her hand on the latch. The metal was cold against her palm. She didn't open the door, she just stood there, listening to the mare breathe. It was a sound of peace. It was proof that Amy wasn't broken, that her gift hadn't been revoked by the tragedy of her personal life. She had taken a creature consumed by fear and given it a safe place to land.
Good night, girl.
Her voice was steady, a whisper that seemed to blend with the shadows. She continued down the aisle, checking each stall. The gelding, with the scar, the 2 colts from the neighboring farm. They weren't the 6-figure warm bloods with braided manes and custom blankets that usually filled these stalls. They were rough, rugged, and damaged. They were survivors, just like her. They didn't care about zoning laws or bank accounts. They just cared that the hay was sweet and the hand on the lead rope was kind. She reached the tack room and pushed the door open. The overhead fluorescent light flickered to life with a hum, illuminating the rows of saddles and bridles. Amy walked to the desk, Lou's desk, really, and sank into the rolling chair. It groaned under her weight, a familiar sound that brought a sudden pang of nostalgia. On the desk lay the small metal cash box. Amy opened it. Inside was the cash Hank had given her, along with a few checks from the other local ranchers who had brought horses in today. She counted it again, though she already knew the total down to the cent. It wasn't a fortune. It wouldn't pay off the mortgage or cover the experimental cardiac treatments Jack was receiving in the ICU. But it was enough to buy feed for 2 weeks. It was enough to keep the lights on without asking Nathan for a loan. It was independence. It was the first breath of air after being held underwater. She closed the box, the lid snapping shut with a decisive click.
Step 1.
Her eyes drifted from the box to the corner of the desk, where a collection of framed photographs sat gathering dust. She reached out and picked up the largest one. It was a photo taken 3 years ago, at a barbecue right here on the ranch. The image was vibrant, frozen in a time before the shadows fell. Jack was at the grill, a pair of tongs raised in mock salute, looking healthy and immovable as a mountain. Lou was laughing, her head thrown back, a glass of wine in her hand, looking effortless and commanding. Tyr was there, holding a younger Lindy on his shoulders, his face turned toward Amy with that quiet, steady adoration that used to anchor her entire world. And Amy was smiling at all of them, looking so incredibly young and unburdened. Amy ran her thumb over the glass, tracing the faces of the people she loved, the people she had pushed away. The guilt hit her then, not as a wave of panic, but as a dull, throbbing ache in the center of her chest. She thought about the last conversation she had with Lou, or rather, the lack of one. She thought about the accusations she had hurled at Lou in front of Dex earlier, suspecting her own sister of sabotage. She thought about Jack lying in that hospital bed, turning his face away from her because she represented the stress that had nearly killed him. She had been so scared. That was the truth of it. She had been so terrified of losing Heartland that she had turned into a cornered animal, biting the hands that tried to feed her.
I'm so sorry.
Her voice cracked, fracturing in the silence of the room. She set the photo down gently, propping it up so it faced her. She clasped her hands together on the desk, leaning forward as if making a confession to a priest.
I'm going to fix this. I'm not just going to fix the money. I'm going to fix us.
She closed her eyes, visualizing the future she was fighting for. She saw herself walking into the hospital room, not with empty hands and excuses, but with a solvent business and a check to cover the bills. She saw herself calling Lou, actually calling her, not waiting for a text and apologizing. She would beg if she had to. She would get on her knees and ask Lou to come home, to take over the books, to be the big sister again. She missed the lectures. She missed the spreadsheets. She missed the safety of knowing Lou was steering the ship.
I promise. Once this is cleared, once this next batch of horses is trained and paid for, I will go to them. I will sit in that room and I won't leave until they forgive me. I will never fight with you again, Lou. I swear it.
She opened her eyes. The resolve in them was fierce. She wasn't just fighting for a piece of land anymore. She was fighting for her right to be a Bartlett. She was fighting to earn her way back into the photograph. She stood up, wiping her hands on her jeans. She felt lighter. The Back to Basics plan wasn't just a business strategy. It was a penance. Every stall she mucked, every horse she gentled, every dollar she earned with her own sweat was a step back toward them. She reached for the light switch.
Just hold on, Grandpa. I'm coming back.
She walked out of the tack room and down the aisle, her footsteps echoing with a new purpose. She didn't know that the zoning commission was meeting in the morning. She didn't know that Nathan was plotting in his tower, or that Gracie had already set the legal trap. She only knew that she had hope. And for tonight, that was enough to keep the wolves at bay. She stepped out of the barn doors into the cool night air. The rain had stopped, leaving the sky scrubbed clean. A few stars were visible through the breaking clouds, cold and distant but undeniably bright. Amy looked up at them. She took a deep breath, filling her lungs with the cold air.
I'll make it right.
And she believed it. She truly believed the worst was over. The sun was setting over Heartland, casting long, bruised purple shadows across the yard. The air was cooling rapidly, promising a frost by morning. Into this rustic twilight rolled Nathan Price's silver sedan, a machine so polished it looked like a spaceship that had landed by mistake in a cow pasture. Nathan killed the engine. He checked his reflection in the rearview mirror, adjusting his tie. He had reservations at the bistro, the good table in the back. He had a script prepared. Listen to her woes, offer the bridge loan again, be the shoulder to cry on. He expected to find Amy huddled in the house, overwhelmed by the rumors and the silence of the empty barn. He stepped out of the car, carrying a bouquet of lilies, sympathy for Flat. He walked toward the porch, but stopped. The house was dark, but the barn was glowing. Nathan frowned. He changed direction, his dress shoes navigating the uneven dirt path with distaste. He approached the barn doors, which were slid open to let in the evening air. Inside, the atmosphere had shifted. It wasn't the ghostly silence of yesterday. There was energy. Amy was standing by the whiteboard near the tack room. She wasn't crying. She wasn't slumped in defeat. She was covered in dust. There was a smudge of grease on her cheek and straw in her hair. She was holding a clipboard, furiously scribbling notes while talking to Dex, who was nodding enthusiastically.
Amy.
Amy turned. Her face was flushed with exertion, her eyes bright. For a second, Nathan didn't recognize her. This wasn't the grieving widow he had been cultivating. This was the miracle girl, the legend he had read about in the dossiers.
Nathan. Hi. I didn't hear you pull up.
She didn't move to hug him. She stayed by the board, tapping the marker against her leg.
I came to pick you up. For dinner? We talked about it yesterday.
Amy looked confused for a moment, then guilty. She glanced at the clipboard, then at the barn aisle where Hank's mare was quietly eating.
Oh, Nathan, I'm so sorry. I completely lost track of time.
It's fine. Go get changed. I can wait. The reservation isn't for another 30 minutes.
Amy shook her head. It wasn't a hesitant refusal. It was firm.
I can't. I really can't tonight. We just got 3 more inquiries for the rehab program. I have to map out the feed schedule and decks, and I need to repair the footing in the round pen before morning.
Nathan took a step into the barn. The smell of horse manure and ambition hit him. He looked at the whiteboard. It was filled with names, dates, and dollar amounts. Small amounts, yes, but real ones.
Amy, you need to eat. You need to rest. You're running yourself into the ground.
I'm not. Actually, I feel great.
She smiled. It was a genuine smile, one that reached her eyes and crinkled the corners. It was terrifying to him.
It feels like I'm finally doing something, Nathan. Instead of just waiting for the bank to call, I'm generating revenue. It's small, but it's a start. I think we can actually turn this around.
Nathan looked at her. He saw the fire. He saw hope. Gracie had said that desperate people make mistakes, but Amy wasn't acting desperate anymore. She was acting driven, and a driven Amy Fleming was a force of nature that had survived plane crashes, wolves, and avalanches. A zoning violation might slow her down, but looking at her now, Nathan wasn't sure it would stop her. He felt a cold knot form in his stomach. If she saved the ranch herself, she wouldn't need his money. She wouldn't need him.
I'm glad you're feeling better, but surely the round pen can wait?
The footing is dangerous. If I'm going to work these horses, it has to be safe. I can't risk an injury. Not now.
She walked over to him, wiping her hands on her jeans before briefly touching his arm.
Rain check. Please? I really need to focus on this. I promised myself I'd fix this mess.
Nathan looked down at the flowers in his hand. They felt ridiculous now. You don't give sympathy flowers to a soldier preparing for battle.
Of course, work comes first. I admire your resilience.
Thanks, Nathan. You're the best.
She turned back to Dex, immediately diving back into a conversation about sand depth and drainage. She had already dismissed him. He was no longer the priority. The ranch was. Nathan turned and walked out of the barn. His smile vanished the moment his back was to her. He reached his car and tossed the flowers into the passenger seat. They landed with a soft rustle, petals bruising against the leather. He got in and slammed the door. The silence of the cabin wrapped around him, but it didn't soothe him. It amplified his thinking. He sat there for a moment, gripping the steering wheel. Gracie's plan was crude. Amy would just fight those. She would dig trenches and fight until she starved. That was the Bartlett way. You couldn't defeat them by attacking the land. They drew strength from the land. He had to change tactics. The old approach, the slow seduction, the let me save you routine was dead in the water, because Amy had decided to save herself. He looked back at the barn. He saw Amy laughing at something Dex said. She looked lighter. She looked hopeful.
Hope,
He whispered, the word like a curse. Hope was the fuel. He had to cut off the supply line. Amy stood alone in the center of the ring. But she wasn't truly alone. She had a safety net. She wasn't even using yet. Lou. Even estranged. Even fighting. Lou was the financial wizard. Lou was the one who could find the legal loopholes Nathan was using. As long as Lou was out there, hovering in the background, Amy had a nuclear option. If Amy called Lou, really called her, begged her to come back, Lou would burn the world down to save her sister. Nathan knew that bond. It was the only thing stronger than his money. He had to neutralize the sister. He had to make sure that when Amy finally reached out, no one was there to answer. He had to destroy Heartland not by burning the barn, but by severing the family tree. He put the car in gear. He wasn't going to the bistro. He was going back to the hotel. He had calls to make. He needed to find out exactly where Lou Fleming was, and he needed to make... Back in the hotel suite, Nathan Price sat bathed in the blue light of his laptop screen. He wasn't looking at zoning maps or bank statements anymore. He was looking at Lou, who represented the biggest threat to his acquisition of the Bartlett estate. Lou Fleming and her daughter, Katie. Make sure she stayed there. Hours. Vancouver. Nathan leaned back, a satisfied smirk touching his lips. They were far away. Physically, they were removed from the board. But emotionally, they were still too close. As long as Amy could pick up a phone and cry to her big sister, the potential for a rescue mission existed. He needed to ensure that Lou was too distracted, too embroiled in her own chaos, to answer that call. And if he couldn't get to Lou directly, she was too sharp, too guarded. He would go through the side door. Katie Fleming Morris. Teenage. Displaced. Lonely. Nathan picked up his phone. He dialed a number that wasn't saved in his contacts.
It's me. The target is confirmed. Vancouver. The daughter is enrolled at West Point Gray Academy. She starts today. Make contact.
He hung up. The trap was set. It wasn't a cage of steel. 3 provinces away, Katie Fleming Morris was living her own personal hell. West Point Gray Academy was nothing like the schools in Hudson. In Hudson, everyone knew her name. Everyone knew she was Fleming. Here, she was just the new girl with the sad eyes and last season's boots. The cafeteria was a minefield of cliques. There were the rich kids discussing ski trips to Whistler, the academics debating grades, and the influencers taking selfies with their salads. Katie stood at the edge of the room, holding her tray with white-knuckled grip. The noise was a physical assault. It made her miss the quiet of the loft so much her chest ached. She found a table in the far corner, near the recycling bins. It was empty. She sat down, keeping her head low. She opened a book, not because she wanted to read, but because it was a shield. If she was reading, she wasn't a loser. She was just busy. She took a bite of a sandwich that tasted like cardboard. She checked her phone. No texts from Dex. No texts from Amy. Just a generic, "Have a good day" from her mom, who was currently locked in the apartment. Katie felt a tear prick the corner of her eye. She blinked it away furiously. She wasn't going to cry. Not here. Is this seat taken? Katie looked up, startled. Standing there was a girl who looked like she had walked out of a magazine. She had perfect wavy hair, a uniform that had been stylishly modified, and a smile that was both confident and conspiratorial. She held a tray with sparkling water and an apple. No, it's free. The girl sat down, not opposite her, but right next to her. It was an invasion of space that felt surprisingly welcome. I'm Mia. You're the new transfer, right? From Alberta? Katie nodded, closing her book. Yeah, I'm Katie. I knew it. You have that look. What look? The "I'm surrounded by idiots, and I miss real trees" look. Katie laughed. She couldn't help it. It was the first time she had laughed in days. Is it that obvious? Only to another outsider. I transferred here last year from Toronto. It sucks for the first month. Then you realize everyone else is faking it too. And it gets easier. Mia opened her water, the carbonation hissing softly. So Alberta? Cowboys? Mountains? Cowboys, actually. My family owns a ranch. Heartland. Mia's eyes lit up. It looked like genuine fascination. Katie had no idea it was the result of a briefing dossier she had memorized an hour ago. No way. That is so cool. I've always wanted to learn to ride. You must think we're all so soft here. It's just different. My grandpa is sick, and my aunt is, well, things are messy at home. That's why we're here. Mia leaned in, her expression softening into perfect sympathy. Messy is my middle name. My parents are divorced and currently suing each other for custody of the golden retriever. If you need to vent or just escape this prison for coffee, I'm your girl. Katie looked at Mia. For the first time since leaving Hudson, she didn't feel invisible. She felt seen. She felt like maybe, just maybe, she could survive this exile. Thanks, Mia. I might take you up on that. Good. Here, give me your phone. Put your number in. We're going shopping this weekend. You can't survive Vancouver rain without the right gear. Katie unlocked her phone and handed it over. Mia typed her number in with lightning speed. Done. Now tell me about this ranch. Is it like Yellowstone? Is there drama? Katie smiled, leaning back. You have no idea. As they talked, Mia kept her phone in her lap, under the table. While Katie described the horses and the barn, Mia's thumb silently swiped the screen, sending a text message. The message wasn't to a friend. It was to an unsaved number with a Hudson area code. Contact made. She's trusting. She's already talking about the family drama. I'll have the details on the mom soon. Mia looked up from her lap, beaming at Katie with the warmth of a best friend. It sounds intense. You're so brave, Katie. I'm glad I found you. Katie smiled back, her heart feeling lighter. She didn't see the wolf. She only saw the sheep's clothing. In the penthouse suite, the silence was absolute until the phone signaled. Nathan Price reached for the device, his movements slow and deliberate. He picked it up, the screen casting a cool, pale light on his face. He read the message from the unknown number Mia. Contact made. She's trusting. She's already talking about the family drama. I'll have the details on the aunt soon. A small, satisfied smile touched the corners of his mouth. It wasn't a smile of joy. It was the smile of a chess player who had just moved a knight into a position that wouldn't pay off for 10 moves. But when it did, it would be a checkmate. He set the phone back down. Gracie was sitting in the armchair across the room, reviewing legal documents. She looked up, sensing the shift in his mood. Good news.
Better. Intelligence. Better. Intelligence.
He stood up and walked to the wet bar, pouring a glass of water. He didn't need alcohol tonight. He needed clarity.
The daughter took the bait. Mia is in.
Gracie rolled her eyes, tossing the file she was reading onto the floor. I still don't see the point. It's a teenage girl, Nathan. What is she going to give us? Diary entries? Prom drama? We need financial access codes, not gossip. Nathan turned, leaning against the bar. He looked at his sister with a mix of pity and annoyance. Gracie was a sledgehammer. She broke things. She didn't understand that sometimes you had to dismantle them.
Lou Fleming is a fortress, Gracie. She's smart, she's paranoid, and she's protective. We can't hack her, and we can't bribe her, but every fortress has a ventilation shaft. Katie is the shaft.
He took a sip of water, his eyes cold.
If Lou is distracted, if she's worried about her daughter acting out, or getting into trouble, or hanging with the wrong crowd, she takes her eye off the ball. She misses a filing deadline. She forgets to transfer funds. And more importantly, if Amy calls her for help, Lou might be too busy dealing with a crisis in Vancouver to answer the phone.
Gracie considered this. She nodded slowly, conceding the point. Divide and conquer.
Isolate and destroy.
The sun rose over Heartland the next morning with a deceptive brilliance. The frost from the night before clung to the fence rails, glittering like diamonds in the pale light. It was a beautiful, crisp Alberta morning, the kind of morning that usually signaled a good day. Amy Fleming woke up before her alarm. She stretched, her muscles stiff from the work in the round pen, but it was a good stiffness. She felt capable. She felt ready. She walked to the window and looked out at the yard. The horses were already moving in the paddocks, their breath misting in the cold air. Hank's mare was at the fence, looking calm.
We're going to be okay.
She whispered the words to the glass, reinforcing the vow she had made the night before. She will work hard today. She would generate more cash. And then she would go to the hospital and fix her family. She dressed quickly, pulling on her work boots and a warm jacket. She skipped coffee, eager to get to the barn. She grabbed an apple from the bowl in the kitchen on her way out. She stepped out onto the porch. The air was biting, waking her up instantly. She walked down the steps, her boots crunching on the gravel. She was heading toward the barn, her mind already organizing the training schedule for the day. But as she reached the bottom of the driveway near the main gate, something caught her eye. A car was parked just outside the property line. It wasn't Nathan's silver sedan. It wasn't Hank's rusted truck. It was a nondescript white government vehicle. Amy slowed down. The apple turned to ash in her mouth. A man in a gray uniform stepped out. He held a clipboard and a roll of bright orange tape. He didn't look at Amy. He walked straight to the Heartland sign. The sign Jack had painted. The sign that had welcomed thousands of clients over the years. He slapped a large plastic-wrapped notice onto the wood. Then, he unrolled the orange tape, stretching it across the open gate. Amy broke into a run.
Hey, what are you doing?
The man turned. He looked bored. He looked like a man who did this 10 times a day. Amy Fleming?
Yes, what is that? You can't tape off my gate.
Notice of zoning violation. Section 402, subsection C. Operating a commercial rehabilitation facility in an agricultural zone without a Class C permit. Amy stopped, breathless, staring at the orange tape. It looked like a wound across the entrance of her home.
What? No, we're a ranch. We've always been a ranch.
A ranch is for boarding and breeding. Ma'am, rehabilitation of high-risk animals is a commercial veterinary enterprise. You don't have the permits. He handed her a clipboard. Cease and desist order, effective immediately. No new animals in, no commercial activity until a hearing is set.
A hearing? When?
The commission is backed up. The earliest slot is 6 weeks. Amy felt the blood drain from her face. 6 weeks. She had money for 2 weeks of feed. If she couldn't take in horses, if she couldn't work.
Who reported this? We've been here for 20 years. Who reported us?
The man shrugged, taking the clipboard back after she refused to sign. Anonymous complaint. Have a nice day, ma'am. He got back in his car. He drove away. Amy stood alone at the gate. The bright orange tape fluttered in the wind. Cease and desist. The hope from last night, the fragile, beautiful hope, didn't just break. It evaporated. She looked at the barn. She looked at the horses she couldn't legally train. She looked at the road leading to the hospital where her grandfather lay dying, paid for by money she could no longer earn. She realized then that her back-to-basics plan hadn't been a solution. It had been a trap. She had stepped right into it. She sank to her knees in the gravel, the cold seeping through her jeans.
Lou?
She whispered the name, but she didn't reach for her phone. She felt too ashamed. She had promised to fix it, and instead, she had been shut down. Steel bars. It was a cage of friendship,